So, all right. So, hello everyone to this summary of the 10th session of the free PMP training. Session 10 took place on Monday, 24th of February at 7 p.m. GMT plus one. So, as usual, we start with a summary of the session. So, it went for about 2.5 hours. Actually, a little longer, probably like almost 3 hours. It was a light session. I think people enjoyed it. So we've covered around 74 slides. We've had 25 in chapter practice questions, and of course the 10 chapter test, of the risk management. We've covered the entire chapter of the risk management, chapter number 10. We've covered section 10.1, which is the risk types. 10.2, which is the risk analysis, and 10.3, which is responding to risks. So as usual, we will share with you a summary and the top 10 slides we picked for you, even though it wasn't really easy to pick, the top 10 slides from this chapter in particular, because almost all the slides are important, okay? So, all right, so we started the session, first of all, with a recap of the previous sessions. Then we started, with chapter 10, risk management, section 10.1. We first went on, learning about the different types of risks. So, one of the first things we learned, how to build risk management plan. This is in waterfall and the various steps, of it, like, planning risk management, then, how to identify project risks, how to qualitatively assess risks, and the risks with a high score, they proceed to advanced analysis called quantitative risk analysis. Okay, so we don't perform quantitative analysis, to all the risks, only the risks that have high score out of the qualitative analysis, and we discussed that. We explained how to do that, in the session. Then risks or prioritized risks with high score, they go for further analysis called quantitative risk analysis. And then, for those risks, we plan the risk responses, then implement the responses and monitor the risks, because maybe the other risks which are not prioritized, they could change their priority. Okay, it can happen at any time. Okay. Then we saw the risk breakdown structure, how to categorize the risks into, for example, external, operational, project management, etc. Okay, some they could use also commercial, etc. Then we saw also the probability and impact matrix, which is part of the risk management plan, to try, to have or explain the different levels of risks. One of the most important slides is to explain the difference between risk and issue, because many people confuse between risks and issues. And we said that, okay, so risk is a potential event, okay, it's a probable event, it's an uncertain event. Maybe it will happen, maybe not. And risk can be positive, called opportunity, like with a potential positive impact, or can have a potential negative impact, called threat. Okay, the risk is always recommended at the risk register and treated through preventive actions. Okay, however, issues are always something negative which has already happened, and treated through corrective action or a workaround. And usually we start with the root cause analysis, and we fix it or apply corrective action through change request. Okay, and the issue is always documented in the issue log. Okay, and we also explained that we don't consider an event a risk related to the project unless it have a triggering condition. Okay, so like we don't just go ahead and start documenting everything as a risk. Okay, and we said clearly that a risk is always, and we explained, how preventive actions, these are proactive measures, okay, in order to prevent, the threat from happening, and corrective action is a reactive measure. Then we also had a slide about the VUCA. VUCA, there is an acronym. V stands for volatility. That's when an event constantly changes, versus predictability. Okay, sorry. Volatility is the opposite of predictability. A volatile event is an event that changes rapidly. Okay, has got a high rate of change. Also, the U stands for uncertainty, which is not understanding, not being able to understand an event or analyze it properly. That's the opposite of understanding. Complexity, the C stands for complexity. That's when an event has got many interconnected factors. That's the opposite of simplicity. And the A stands for ambiguity, which is the opposite of clarity. And we have explained that, at the beginning of the project, always the cone of uncertainty is high, is large, is big, because, we don't understand the environment properly, or the technology, or, the customer requests, etc. But the further we go in the project, the more we learn about the customer, their needs, the technology, the product, the expected deliverables, etc., the less the uncertainty, or the cone of uncertainty becomes. Okay. Another slide, very important, which covers few other terms which are usually present in the PMP exam. We talked about the urgency, which is, about assessing how quickly risk response needs to be implemented in order to be effective. Dormancy, which is, after a risk occurs, how long after that we discover its impact. Proximity, which is, how much time left do we have, the amount of time before the risk can impact one or more objectives. And connectivity, which is this risk single, like individual, or is it related to other individual product risks? Okay. So we saw that. We also explained the difference between individual risk, which impacts just one area of the project, or overall project risk, which probably would impact the project as a whole. We also explained the difference between inherent risks, residual risks, and secondary risks. So inherent risks, they exist because of the absence of a control mechanism. Residual risks, they remain even after we apply the plans. And secondary risks, they actually they're like, a result of the response plan. Okay. And then we went on explaining something very important, which is, the difference between known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Okay. So known unknowns, these are known risks. Okay. And usually they're covered, as we explained in the session, they're covered by what we call a contingency plan or contingency reserve. Okay. We will explain that, maybe in details later. Okay. How to calculate that. So this is an output of a quantitative risk analysis. Okay. The contingency plan or reserve. And, we link this, with the slide to 88 of our training presentation, which, in which it was explained how to calculate the project budget. And we explained, like, this contingency reserve, it is, calculated through the advanced or quantitative risk analysis, which you will see later. And it is used, to cover for the known risks in case they materialize. Okay. As for the unknown unknowns, which are the unknown risks, okay, these are covered by the management reserve, which is set aside, by the management. Okay. And the project manager doesn't use that without approval of the management. And in case an unforeseen risk, an unknown risk, realizes, then we need to apply a workaround, because that's unknown risk. Once it happens, it affects the project negatively, it's considered an issue, considered as an issue, and we apply a workaround or a pivot, for it. Okay. Then we started section 10.2, for the risk analysis. So we talked about different analysis techniques. We start with the qualitative risk analysis. Okay. So we talked actually about we went on like through the risk register. We explained, how to, or we gave examples how to calculate the probability of a risk, the impact of a risk, and we explained how in the risk register we record the risk with the triggering condition. Then we try to measure the probability and impact, and we shared a few techniques how to do that. And then, the score of the risk, and we talked about the threshold in case the risk is above the threshold. The risk score is above the threshold, then it goes into further analysis for the reserve. Contingency reserve. And if it's below the threshold, the risk score, then it just stays for monitoring. Actually, we explained that in the session. We even share the template, the template, not this one, but the template you have, which we have shared with you to use at your work. And we explained to you, how to calculate the score, and, in order to know, whether to respond to the risk or just keep monitoring it. Because if your risk score is less than threshold, then it's not really necessary to respond to it because it would just consume company resources and it's not of that big importance. Okay, then we talked about other qualitative risk analysis like the what if scenario, like asking what if questions, the alternative analysis like having different alternatives and studying the pros and cons of each alternative. We also saw the decision tree analysis, which is used to decide based on various circumstances, whether, for example, like the example we had to pick this contractor or that contractor, for example. Then we went on studying the advanced risk analysis called quantitative risk analysis, and we saw in particular the expected monetary value, and we've had few examples, and we just go through this example one in this summary. For example, we have 4 risks in a project. So risk A has got a probability 50%, and impact is like negative impact, which is a threat, so minus 20,000. So EMV is 50% of minus 20,000, which is minus 10,000. Risk B, EMV minus 10,000. Risk C, EMV minus 9,600. And risk D, actually, it might have a positive potential impact. So it's an opportunity. So EMV is 1,600. So this is expected monetary value of a risk, multiplying probability with the impact, whether it's positive or negative. Then summon all those EMVs, and we ended up in this example having negative risk exposure of minus 19,000, which means we need to have a contingency reserve of 19,000 because we have a negative risk exposure. If risk exposure was positive, like we saw in example 2, then we shouldn't have a contingency reserve. Okay, so this is an advanced technique called expected monetary value. So how much, well, what's the monetary value we expect out of the risk? Okay, and this is how we create the contingency reserve for the threats. Okay, remember, contingency reserve is for the threats, not the opportunities. Okay, and also we saw another quantitative risk analysis called Monte Carlo analysis, which is a computer-based, in order to project data and try to foresee, through the simulations. We also talked about the risk burn-down chart, which is, tracking the risks over the time in the project. Okay, then we started section 10.3, which is about planning risk responses. First, we started talking about active and passive acceptance. So active acceptance, that's when you have a risk and, you take active measures, and passive acceptance, that's when you have identified risks but you don't take active measures, you just monitor the risks. Okay, and we talked about the 5 response strategies for a threat and for an opportunity. So we said for a threat, you can either accept the threat without doing anything, just monitoring it, or you can decide to mitigate, try to take measures to reduce either the probability or the impact or both, and we gave few examples. You can try, for example, transfer the risk, like for example through buying an insurance, so the other party would assume or take responsibility of the impact of the threat, or you can decide to avoid the threat, like for example, change the plan totally, like leave. This is called the leave situation, or change the plan. And in case the threat is out of your authority as a project manager or project team, then you can escalate to the sponsor and steering committee. Okay, and for the opportunities, the 5 response strategies, you can if you identify an opportunity, you can either accept its existence without doing anything, just monitoring it, okay, until probably it gets stronger or closer, or you can try to enhance, like try to increase the probability of occurrence or the impact if it happens, and we gave a few examples. Or in case the opportunity is really cannot exploit it or take advantage of it by yourself, you can share it like with the partnering company, or you can just exploit by taking action. And in case the opportunity is outside of the scope of the project or outside of the authority of the project manager project team, you can escalate it to the sponsor or steering committee. Okay, so and then finally we went on understanding the difference between risk audit, which is about examining the application of the process of risk management, and the risk review, which is about examining the effectiveness of the response plans. We also saw the issue log, where we record and log the issues. Then we've had the tips and tricks of the chapter, and the 10 test questions. Okay, and here our top 5 practice questions picked for you. It wasn't easy again. Okay, question 1. So during the execution phase of a project team identifies a previously unforeseen risk, so unknown risk, okay, that could delay the project for several months. What should the project manager do first? Update the risk register, perform qualitative risk analysis, update the project sponsors, or perform quantitative risk analysis. Since the question is asking what to do first, which means we need to follow the steps in the process. So when we discover a new risk, first we have to record it in the risk register, then perform qualitative risk analysis, then have an advanced quantitative risk analysis, analysis and inform the stakeholders. Okay, so these are the logical steps in the process. Then, second question, an agile project team is using Scrum methods. A previously unidentified risk has occurred, so unknown risk, okay, it's become an issue and threatens the current release. So what should the project manager do? Stop the project work until the risk is assessed and analyzed. We don't stop project work unless if it's a serious thing. But here, it doesn't say like, it will immediately impact the project. Okay, bring the issue up during the next stand-up meeting. We don't discuss issues in the stand-up meeting. We identify issues in the stand-up meeting, but we don't discuss them. Okay, engage the team to facilitate the workaround. Yes, actually, this is good. Okay, or collaborate with the stakeholders and the project team to develop a risk response. Well, in Scrum, we focus on the team more than engaging stakeholders. We're not against engaging stakeholders, but in Scrum and Agile, it's like first or the team is self-organized, self-managed, so it's better to engage them to facilitate a workaround for this issue. Okay. Question 3: a project manager created a contingency plan associated with the risk. The risk was realized, but the client insists on using a new workaround instead. The requested workaround will introduce delays and require additional budget. Now, what should the project manager do? Request to use the management reserve to keep the schedule. No, we don't use management reserve. Okay. Because the risk is already known. Okay, mitigate risk associated with the workaround to avoid project delays. Okay, proceed with the approval with the approved risk response. No, because actually the customer insists on using another workaround. Discuss the options with the client as part of the change control process. Yes, this is good. Why? Because actually the workaround will consume more time and budget, so we need to agree with the client on how to handle such changes. Okay, so this is, I think, more important than mitigating the risks associated with the workaround to avoid project delays, because what about the budget then? This response just to the delays. What about the budget? Question 4: during the process of hiring an electrical engineer, the project manager only conducted one behavioral interview. Later on, they discovered that the candidate's technical skills do not meet the job requirements. Therefore, they decided that henceforth they will support the recruitment process with a technical test and an additional technical interview. So what risk response strategy did the project manager apply? Mitigate, accept, transfer, or avoid. So here, okay, the project manager, didn't made a mistake. They hired somebody technical with just one round of interview. So they discovered that it was a mistake. So they decided to have 3 rounds of interviews going forward, with any new hiring. So actually, the project manager did not accept the situation and say, you know what, I will continue with 1 round of interview. Did not transfer the hiring process to HR or somebody else, and did not avoid, did not say, I'm not doing hiring anymore. No, they actually tried to, mitigate by trying to reduce the probability of doing the same mistake again by introducing more rounds of interviews. So actually what the project manager did is mitigating. And the last question we have picked for you, in the summary of the session: project manager is in charge of New York's new bridge construction project. They were informed by one of the project subject matter experts that next July all of the bridge construction work will need to stop, taking into consideration the past history of river flooding due to hurricane season. Thus, they agree with the expert and arrange to stop the work during that month. So this decision is considered as what? Acceptance, transfer, mitigation, avoidance. Now, the expert told the project manager, you know what, we recommend that you stop the work during July because floods can damage the work. So the project manager did not accept. He didn't say, you know what, it's okay, I acknowledge the risk, but I'm not taking any action. No, that didn't happen. The project manager did not transfer. Actually, didn't say, you know what, I will bring another construction company to do the work in July instead of us, and they assume responsibility. No, that didn't happen. The project manager didn't mitigate. Didn't say, you know what, we will continue the work, but we'll take measures, like, for example, having some sandbags around us, to stop the work from, coming to us. No, it didn't say that. The project manager said, yes, I agree, I will stop the work during July. So that's avoidance. Okay, so thank you so much. This was the summary of session 10 of the risk management. See you on session 11 on Wednesday, 26th of February at 7 p.m. GMT +1, in which we will discuss how to measure the project performance. That would be chapter 11.